Please be seated. Back for the second half of the morning testimony on case number 19 CR 586 A and B, State of Ohio versus Daniel Groves and State of Ohio versus Jessica Groves. The witness is, Ms. Kraft is back in the witness stand. Is the state ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Defense ready to proceed?
Here, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Tiemann, you may continue to inquire.
I'm going to direct your attention to May of 2019 of various attempts that Children's Services made to locate baby Dylan. Was there an attempt made on May 7th at the residence to locate the Groves family?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Yes.
Okay. Was that the one where another caseworker, Megan Hankins, went out?
Yes.
Okay. At that point, was the car there?
Yes. As well as the full-size pickup truck, Dodge.
Okay, all the vehicles that you knew they may have utilized?
Yes.
Okay. Was there another attempt on May 15th by Children's Services at the residence? And that would be page 16 of 53.
Yes.
These attempts are Children's Services staff kind of doing the same MO. They're leaving notes, they're knocking on the doors, they're looking to see if there's movement or lights or anything of that nature?
Yes.
Okay. And on May 15th, the Cavalier was gone, is that correct?
Cavalier was gone, but the red truck was still parked in the same spot.
Okay.
Appeared to be unmoved.
Then again, on May 23rd, which would be on page 20 of 53, was there another attempt at the residence?
There was another attempt of the vehicle. I'm sorry, another attempt to the home. She parked at the end of the driveway and walked the driveway.
Okay. In an effort at stealth?
There was a red car, the red Cavalier was there.
Okay, but what was the purpose for parking at the end of the driveway?
The road.
Okay. Road conditions versus just trying to...
Correct.
Okay. Well, May 31st, was there another attempt at a home visit? It'd be
Yes.
page 23. Okay. No red Cavalier? Truck in
No.
the same spot?
No red Cavalier in the driveway, and the Dodge, the red Dodge pickup truck appeared to not have been moved.
And on June 7th, was there another attempt at a home visit?
Yes.
Now, during this time in May, were you also contacting different entities to see if there had been any contact with the Groves family?
Yes, we called Care Source.
Well, let's say numerous government entities,
Yes.
attorneys,
Yes.
family members,
Yes.
Daniel Jr.
Yes.
Was it your understanding that juvenile court personnel was also out looking for the Groves?
Yes.
Was it your understanding that at different times the sheriff office was also out looking for the Groves?
Yes.
Ultimately, on June 10th, were the Groves apprehended by law enforcement?
Yes.
Were you aware of an allegation that when questioned, there was indication that Dylan was taken by Children's Services months ago?
Yes, I received a call at 9:21 p.m. Stating that they have arrested Daniel and Jessica Groves, and that they informed me that Jessica and Daniel was telling them that I came several months ago and took the child.
Did Children's Services take the child?
No, the last day I seen Dylan alive was March the 28th.
And then you learned on June 12th when Dylan's body was found.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Let's make cross-examine the witness.
Just a second, Your Honor.
Good morning, Mrs. Kraft. We're going to, prosecutor went through quite a few things with you, and we're going to sort of start all over, start back quite a bit. When you mentioned your, how long had you been with the agency? I think you mentioned that earlier.
I was hired in June of 2018.
So, okay. And you mentioned, where did you work before that?
Shawnee Family Health Center,
Shawnee Family Health Center, which is,
a mental health facility and a physician's office
okay, what did you do there?
as a caseworker,
Okay. Same type of work,
just with adults.
just with adults. Okay. Where did you work before that?
I worked for Rest Care.
Okay. Did you have any sort of casework experience before that?
Just with my internship that I had for my degree.
Oh, okay. Okay. So when you came over to Children's Services, was there any training involved?
We do core training.
You do what? I'm sorry?
Core training.
Core training?
It's 8 trainings that we have to go to throughout the first year.
Okay. Are those somewhere that you go to?
It's
or-
Athens.
Athens?
Yes.
Okay. Are they a week long, day long? How long are they?
Some of them's 2 days, some of them's 1 day. It just depends on what the core training is for that week, or
Okay.
that month.
And you have done, you said 8 of them?
8 of them.
Okay. When you got involved in this case, have you done all your training?
Not all 8.
Not all 8. How many have you done?
I had done 6 at that time.
I'm sorry?
6 at that
6?
time.
Okay. All right. So, is it fair to say that if you not completed your core training, that you're still working as a caseworker and responsible for high-profile cases?
We're still involved in cases.
Okay, all right. You weren't working as you didn't have you're the only caseworker on this case, right?
Yes,
Okay, all right. So
in January, starting in January the 25th.
okay, so I'm trying to get at, you were the only caseworker on this case, but you had not completed your training.
Correct.
Okay. In that training, are you taught or given examples of how to write a report, how to put information into this activity log?
Yes,
Okay. Are you told what to specifically put into this activity log?
the safety, the surroundings, if the baby's clean, if we view any marks, anything like that.
Okay. Is it general or is it specific as to what you put in the activity log?
Well,
The training.
Oh, at the training?
Yeah.
Oh, it's specific, it depends on the child and the surroundings, what we put in there. But the safety we check, the housing, the baby if they're cleaning, just safety needs and basic needs.
Okay. What I'm getting at is that core training, do they tell you to be specific, or do they give you certain wordage that you need to put in there?
We need to be detailed.
Detailed. Do they look for specific words? Do they say at training you need to put these specific words in it?
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily. Okay, thank you. You did 3 home visits, correct?
Yes.
Well, I mean, you made many attempts.
Tense, but I had seen the child 3 times.
3 times. On February 4th,
Yes,
on February 25th,
yes,
and on March 28th.
yes.
Okay. I would like you to read these activity logs. You don't have to go through some of the case category or location type or any of that information. I want you to read the date, who created the activity log, and I want you to read the narrative. And let's start with February 4th. Oh, I'm sorry, that's, I got that as page 24 of 46. You need to take this down. It's,
Okay.
okay. Could you, activity date, created by, and then the narrative.
It was created on February the 4th
Okay,
by Patricia Kraft.
okay,
And it states, caseworker completed 7-day home visit with Dylan and Daniel. Jessica and Daniel both were there when caseworker was visiting. Dylan is doing good, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Daniel came in from school when caseworker was there. Daniel stated that things was going good. Jessica stated that Mahajan has her on a low risk. Jessica also stated about drug court. At that time, she is going.
Let me stop you right there. I think you're ad-libbing a little bit, and I would like for you to read it word for word.
Jessica stated that Mahajan has her on low risk. Jessica also stated about drug court.
No, that's not,
Asked about drug court.
yes, let's,
Jessica also asked about drug court. At this time, she is going to Mahajan's twice a week and gets drug screened twice a week. She goes through groups the same
No,
time.
no.
She has groups the same time as drug court. So caseworker advised her to go to Mahajan until further notice.
let me just stop. Your Honor, I would like you to instruct the witness to read it verbatim.
Your Honor, oh my.
Briefly.
You want us to call the bench?
No, ma'am, read it to the best of your ability. The document speaks for itself. If you want her to read it, that's fine. If you don't like how she read it, Mr. Stratton, you can have the jury review it if it's submitted as evidence.
Yes, Your Honor. Please, continue, Mrs. Graff.
So caseworker advised her to go to Mahajan until further notice. Jessica and Daniel asked about the immunization card, crib card from Dylan's discharge paper. Caseworker will locate them for them. Dylan has a crib, a swing, and all necessary things. Dylan has a doctor's appointment on Thursday. Dylan and Daniel's basic needs are being met by the parents. Dylan and Daniel appeared clean and appropriately dressed. No placement concerns were reported. No medical concerns were reported. Interaction between the parents and children appeared positive and supportive. No physical hazards were viewed in or around the home at the time of visit. There is no safety plan in effect currently. While assessing the child's safety, well-being, and the appropriateness of placement, Caseworker determined vulnerability for CAN is low. There is no status change reported for the parents.
For the jury, could you explain what CAN is?
Child abuse and neglect.
Okay. And again, that says low, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I am going to show you what is Defense Exhibits A1 through H1.
Whose correct gets that back in the right order there, right together before you move on to the next stop. Thank you, ma'am.
Could you tell me what those are photos of?
The home, the living room, the bedroom, Dylan's playpen, another playpen, another playpen, a playpen, and playpen.
Go over the numbers on those exhibits or letters on those exhibits.
A1 through H1. So A1, is this the home of the Groves?
Yes,
Okay. And these are the windows that you mentioned before that you looked in, correct?
yes,
Okay. You look in all of them?
no.
Okay. Did you look in these windows?
I looked in the one beside the door.
Well, inside the door, okay?
Yeah,
You said you had to jump?
yeah.
See that? So, D1. You said you looked in the home, you've done 3 home visits. Did you go throughout the house, look in the rooms, make sure there were a bed, food, it was clean?
Daniel was putting a crib together. He had it to be put together when the first visit I was there.
Okay, is this the crib you're talking about?
No,
Okay, all right. So have you ever seen this crib before?
no, not that one.
Not that one, okay. Again, what is that a picture of?
Of a bed.
C1? Did you know what this is a picture of? So, but you said you went to every room.
No, I didn't go to every room.
You didn't go to them. You didn't. You didn't go to every room? You didn't check out the house?
I don't, the only time I do a safety check is, safety audit, is if we remove a child ourselves and have to put them in there. Usually the investigator does the safety audit of the home.
So in these other exhibits, you mentioned, again, you don't know what this crib is. You have never seen this crib.
Never seen that one.
Okay. Dan, never seen that. Same picture, same crib.
What exhibit is that, Mr. Sheriff?
Oh, E1, Your Honor. All in order there. And then a couple other pictures of the crib that you have not seen. G1 there, Your Honor. And then picture of closer to the crib that you claim you have not seen. Correct?
Correct.
Let's go to the second home visit, and that is the one on 225. And I would like you to read that activity date, created by, and narrative also.
It was created by Patricia Kraft.
Okay.
Caseworker completed ongoing monthly visit. Dylan appeared clean and appropriately dressed. No placement concerns, no medical concerns were reported. The child's basic needs are being met by parents. No physical hazards were viewed in or around the home at the time of visit. Supervision and discipline appear age appropriate. The parents ensure that all scheduled appointments are kept. Interaction between the parents and the child are positive and supportive. While assessing the child's safety, well-being, and the appropriateness of placement, caseworker determined that vulnerability for CAN is low. There is no status changes reported for the family. Daniel stated that Dylan went to the doctor on Thursday. He weighs 8 pounds, 9 ounces, and is 22 inches long. Daniel stated the baby sleeps at 6 hours at a time. Dylan has own bed and bedding.
Okay. So you viewed a crib, but just not this one?
Not that one.
Okay, all right. Also like you to read the 328 home visit.
Created by Patricia Kraft. Caseworker completed ongoing home visit. Dylan was taken in bottle when caseworker arrived. Dylan appeared clean and appropriately dressed. No medical issues were reported. No placement concerns were reported. The child's basic needs are being met by the parents. No physical hazards were viewed in or around the home at the time of visit. Supervision and discipline appear age appropriate. The parents ensure all medical appointments are kept. Interaction between parents and children are positive and supportive. It was discussed if there was a possibility that Jessica could come back home. Jessica stated she is missing the bonding with Dylan. Caseworker informed both parents that caseworker would staff with Lisa Thomas, and caseworker will call them later on to them today with an answer. Caseworker informed both they need to be at the hearing on April the 3rd, 2019. Caseworker staffed with Lisa Thomas about the possibility of Jessica going back home to bond with Dylan. It was agreed that a safety plan would be put in place, and it would state that Jessica would attend all drug court days counseling. Mahajan for treatment, contact caseworker weekly upon dates. If Jessica has one positive drug screen or does not attend drug court, counseling both individual and group, this is a possibility both children will be removed.
So is your supervisor telling you that Jessica can come back home?
If there's a safety plan put in.
Was there ever a safety plan put?
They never called me back.
Okay.
I had text them to call me.
Yeah, that's fine, that's great. Let me step back for a moment. How many cases do you handle at this time, if you know, or now? How many cases are you handling as a caseworker for Children's Services?
31.
31, okay. Was it at that time or now?
Now,
Okay, what was it at that time?
about 23.
About 23, okay. Okay, with 23 cases, you were able to remember every detail about these cases. Like what he was wearing on each visit. You were able to remember that from your memory,
Yes.
okay? On the 2-4 visit, you said he was wearing a long sleeve sleeper.
Mm-hmm.
No hat?
Oh,
And that Jess was holding him, correct?
Jessica was holding him.
Okay. But you did not hold him.
No,
You did not pick him up.
no.
Isn't it true that you merely glanced at him?
I looked at him from sitting on the couch.
From sitting on the couch?
Yes, I'm right here and Jessica was right here.
So you came in the house, sat down on the couch, didn't view Dylan at all, and the only time you looked at him was from the couch.
When I seen Jessica with Jessica.
Okay? So you didn't even go over to him and look and take a look at him?
No,
Okay. And let me clarify this. Daniel Jr. said everything was okay at the house on the
Yes.
2-4 visit. Okay. But again, on the 2-4 visit, you didn't go in every room in the house.
no. He came in, talked to me for a few minutes and went to his bedroom.
Okay. So in these notes, you said there's no physical hazards, but you really didn't look at the entire property or the entire house to see if there were any physical hazards, did you?
We look when we come in around the house,
You didn't even look in the house,
not in every room.
okay? On the 225 visit, you said that Dylan was wearing a long sleeve sleeper, correct?
Yes,
Okay. Again on that visit, did you just come in and sit on the couch?
yes,
Okay.
and we talked.
And you talked?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And did you observe Dylan from your seat on the couch?
Before I sat down, I looked at him from head to toe.
All right. From head to toe. So you picked him up, held him?
No, I didn't hold him.
Okay. All right. So you sort of just glanced at him, didn't you?
I looked at him.
Okay. At the 328 home visit, you didn't ask Daniel why he wasn't at court, did you?
We texted him the day before.
Okay, but your earlier
Yes.
testimony was you did not ask him at that home visit, did you?
No, I did not ask him at that home visit.
Okay. And Dylan, at that visit, was in a long sleeve sleeper.
Yes.
Okay. Again, did you just walk in and have a seat on the couch?
At first, but before I left, I got up, walked over, looked at him. I made two statements. I wonder if he's going to have natural curly hair like his dad and brother. He has the prettiest blue eyes for a baby. And I touched the bottom of his foot and he grinned.
Patricia Kraft, you know that's not a true statement, that you did none of that, that you merely glanced at Dylan and did not actually observe him, did you?
Objection sustained. Rephrase your question. Make the question not a statement, Mr. Shredder.
I think it's curious that you make the statement that you heard him make no sounds, no crying noises or anything, did you?
Not while I was visiting.
Okay. You mentioned that he was taking a bottle when you got there,
Mm-hmm.
and that at some point he stopped.
She was burping him.
She was burping him? Okay.
Make sure you answer out loud.
Mrs. Kraft, do you think you did your job to the best of your ability?
Yes, I did it within the law. The only thing I didn't do was bust the door down to find that baby.
One second, Your Honor. Mrs. Kraft, I would like you to read case note dated 5/2, and it begins with caseworker staffed with Supervisor Lisa Thomas. Page 38 of 46, but the page numbers are different.
You may. Objections overruled. Defense may continue with your question.
Mrs. Kraft, did you find that 5/2 note? Were you staffed with Supervisor Lisa Thomas?
Yes.
Okay. Again, activity date created by, and then once you read the narrative.
The activity date was 5/2/19. It was created by me, myself. It stated, caseworker staff with Supervisor Lisa Thomas about Daniel not showing up to court. Caseworker asked supervisor about an Amber Alert, and supervisor informed to go to the staff attorney, Dave Huddleston. Caseworker staffed with Dave, and he informed it would be a supervisor or a Director Fuller decision. Caseworker went back into the supervisor's office and informed her what the attorney said, and supervisor stated that if an Amber Alert goes out, it would give a bad reputation for the agency because we lost a child.
And you think you did your job to your best absolute ability, correct?
Yes.
But your supervisor just said this. Did you report this to anybody?
Yes.
Who did you report it to?
I went downstairs and I was crying, talking to another supervisor, and she was going to call Dr. Fuller.
Okay, but did you report it to Dr. Fuller yourself?
Dr. Fuller was not there at that
Okay.
time.
Did you report it to Dr. Fuller the next time you saw Dr. Fuller?
We discussed it.
You discussed it.
Yeah.
Again, what was the results of that discussion?
On May the 3rd, me and a caseworker was out at lunch. The other caseworker got a text and told us to go to the sheriff's office and put out an Amber Alert.
Okay. No further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Stratton, Ms. Scott, and we'll cross-examine the witness.
Good morning, Ms. Kraft. When the father was drug screened at the hospital on January the 11th of 2019, were you present?
No.
Okay. That was conducted by investigator Johnson, is that
Yes.
correct? Is there an actual note in the activity log that explains the protocol in which she conducted that drug screen?
There's a log created on January the 11th stating that caseworker Lauren Johnson met with Daniel in order for him to drug screen for caseworker. Daniel tested negative for all substance, therefore caseworker Johnson continued with the safety plan.
Do you know if Mr. Groves would have been aware at that time that he was going to be drug screened at that particular time?
No.
Okay. That is not documented by investigator or caseworker Johnson, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Have you conducted a drug screen yourself at a place outside of the agency?
No.
Do you know if there is a separate protocol in regards to conducting a drug screen outside the agency?
If they are doing a removal and it's going to kinship, they usually do it at the home of where the child or children are going to be placed at.
Okay. Well, that was not the situation in this case, correct?
Correct.
This was going to be conducted on the premises of, I believe, Southern Ohio Medical Center, correct?
Lauren's, I do not know where Lauren had tested Mr. Groves at.
It is not documented.
No, it just said she had contacted him.
Okay. So there's no specific documentation other than it was a negative drug screen.
Correct.
There's nothing to indicate that she violated any of the protocol.
Correct.
There is nothing to indicate that someone else was present with him in the restroom at the time he gave a urine sample.
Correct.
There is no indication that that was conducted improperly.
Correct.
Do you carry your own drug screen kits on you when you anticipate drug screening someone outside of the agency?
Yes.
And are those drug screens temperature sensitive?
Yes.
And would that have been the type of drug screen that Lauren Johnson would have given Mr. Groves?
Yes.
Okay. So in order for it to be properly read as a negative drug screen, it would have had to have the appropriate body temperature reflected on the test, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Nothing to indicate otherwise because it is listed as a negative drug screen, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Have you ever known, since working with investigator, caseworker Johnson, that she would conduct drug screens outside of the protocol of the agency?
Could you rephrase that again? I didn't
Yeah.
hear you.
Do you know if she has ever violated policy when conducting drug screens, or are you all trained on how to do that and you do it the same way each and every time?
I have no information on her if
Okay.
she misled the protocol.
Okay, so you would have no reason to have any other knowledge otherwise that she conducted this properly?
Right, I do not.
Okay, thank you. And that's the way it was documented in the activity log, is it was a completely negative drug screen?
Correct.
Thank you. It was also part of your testimony yesterday, I believe, that there is also documentation by, is it easier to refer to her by investigator or caseworker Johnson? Is she both?
Either one's.
Okay,
Either one is fine.
she's both, correct?
Yes.
She holds both of those titles?
Yes.
Okay, just so I don't have to say both, just for efficiency's sake. Caseworker Johnson also noted that Mr. Groves explained to her that he was unaware of Jessica Groves' drug usage until essentially she was ready to give birth, correct?
Correct.
Okay. In this incident, you also made a referral to Help Me Grow.
Correct.
Was that a mandated program that they had to participate in?
When a child is in our custody, they have to follow their recommendations.
Okay.
So if Help Me Grow said that Dylan needed to be in their program, then they would have to follow through with that program.
Right. But there was no such recommendation made because there was no finalization of any of the
They
reports.
right, there's no recommendation because they had no contact with them.
Okay, thank you. When was the drug screen made of Daniel Groves at the agency prior to Dylan being placed in his care? Do you have that exact date? Was that on January 28th or the Friday before that?
Friday before that,
Okay. Is that,
the 25th, I believe.
okay, January 25th.
January the 25th.
Okay. Did Mr. Groves know he was coming in for a drug screen?
No.
So that was a surprise
Yes.
upon his arrival.
Yes.
Are you sure you are the one that actually conducted that drug screen, or was it Supervisor Thomas that by chance conducted that drug screen?
I conducted that drug screen.
Okay. So it was an unannounced drug screen, correct?
Yes,
So he would have no knowledge of making preparation for that?
Objection, speculation.
Just saying.
Okay. I'll rephrase my question, Your Honor. Thank you. There was absolutely no conversation about him taking a drug screen at the agency prior to that, him being requested to do that when he arrived, correct?
correct.
Okay, thank you. And the protocol that you discussed earlier in your testimony, is that the protocol you would have followed when conducting this drug screen?
Correct.
That is correct?
What I done was, he came in the office, I gave him the cup, showed him where the restroom was. I stood out behind the door, told him do not flush the toilet or run the water.
Okay. And also, once again, was there a temperature gauge on that sample cup?
Yes,
Did it match the appropriate body temperature that it should have shown for an appropriate sample being
Yes.
retrieved? And once again, it was a negative drug screen, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So on January the 10th, or January the 11th, I'm sorry, there was a negative drug screen by Mr. Groves.
correct,
There was also one on January the 25th
correct,
of Mr. Groves, correct?
correct.
And are you aware, I'm sorry, strike that, Your Honor. Was Mr. Groves also required to go to Mahajan Therapeutics for an intake, as well as Jessica Groves?
I was unaware if he was referred through the investigator,
Okay. So
because
do
she
you,
would have set that up.
okay. I was just wondering if you were of any other drug screens that would have occurred between January the 11th and January 25th.
I'm unaware of that.
Okay. As part of your agency's discussion regarding placing the child with the parent, and in this case, Mr. Groves, some of the things that you would have ascertained was whether or not they had previous involvement with the agency, correct?
Correct,
And that was a negative
That was
in
a
this
negative.
situation. And that there was no violent background,
correct,
correct? And that was a negative in this situation,
yes,
correct? And that Mr. Groves had at least 2 agency-conducted drug screens, correct?
correct,
And both of those were negative?
yes,
And they were approximately 2 weeks apart, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So all of those things cleared him for placement of the child on January the 28th.
correct,
Okay. He cooperated with you acquiring all of that information.
correct,
He gave you any releases, appropriate information to look up those things, look up those items.
he was instructed to sign all releases,
Okay, so he cooperated in that regard, correct?
correct,
He allowed you to look into his life,
correct,
look into his background,
correct,
look into whether or not he had prior cases,
correct,
look into whether or not he had a criminal record or a violent criminal record, correct? Okay, and all of those came back as a negative,
correct,
including the 2 drug screens.
including the 2 drug screens.
Great, okay. And you, I believe, stated in your testimony that Investigator Johnson would have been the one that had already gone out and cleared the home.
Correct.
Do you know if there is an activity log or a note as to that?
I did not see one
Okay.
that she went out there.
But that would have been the agency's protocol,
Yes,
and there would not have been the suggestion or the recommendation that the child be placed in his care if his home was not qualified.
correct,
Okay. So we can make an assumption that since she made that recommendation to her supervisor, that his home must have qualified.
Correct.
Okay.
Object for the speculatory nature.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay. When you made your personal visits there at the home, although you did not go through the entire residence, you did not have anything glaring or striking at you that there was anything appropriate about the home?
Everything was fine from what I've seen.
Okay, great. The note that was placed into the activity log about Mrs. Groves being loopy on a visit, which was indicating an indication that she may have been under the influence of a substance, did not involve Mr. Groves, correct?
Correct.
Okay. There was no indication from the foster parent that she made that same observation about my client, Mr. Groves, correct?
Correct.
Okay. When you had interaction with him on that first, do you call it a team meeting?
Family team meeting?
Team meeting.
Yes.
Okay, just making sure I got the correct wording. Did you observe anything about Mr. Groves that was inappropriate?
No.
Okay. Did you observe anything about him that would cause you concern when the recommendation was made that the child be placed with him that would have given you pause for calls?
No.
Thank you. And you did conduct a home visit on February the 4th, which was close to your 7-day home
Correct.
visit because there was some weather-related issues, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And everyone was present and you saw them on that day because Daniel Jr. arrived at a later time, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All appeared appropriate with the family.
Yes.
You did not note any exceptions.
None at all.
You did not have concern to where you came back and staffed and said, hey, we need to take the child back out of the home at this time.
Correct.
You did not note, I believe, in your activity log about what the child was actually wearing that day. That is testimony from personal memory, correct?
Correct.
And that's memory from a year ago, correct?
Correct.
Or approximately a year ago. We're not in February yet. And I believe it's also your testimony that you did not actually touch baby Dylan
Correct.
or manipulate him in any fashion.
No.
And the baby was being held by Jessica Groves, correct?
Correct.
Was she cradling him up front
Yeah, she would
across her
cradle
body?
him like this.
Okay. And so not the entire, there were not large portions of his body visible to you, correct?
Correct.
And if she was cradling him to where his head would be resting against her arm, the back of his head would not be exposed, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Probably close to the forehead forward,
Yeah. Yes.
okay? So whether he was wearing a hat or not, you did not see the majority of his head.
I did not see a hat on him.
Okay. But whether he was wearing a hat or not, you did not see the majority of his head.
Correct.
Okay? You did not see the back portion of his head,
No.
and you probably did not see a very great portion from the top of the head backwards, correct?
Correct.
Because the baby was resting in her arms.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. You did not see his arms exposed to you,
Just his hands.
his hands?
Yeah.
Okay. You did not see his chest exposed to you?
He was in a sleeper.
Okay. It's not a trick question. You did not see his legs exposed to you?
No.
Nowhere really other than his
Face and his hands.
hands, maybe his ears, and a portion of his forehead area, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Did you conduct any drug screens on the parents at their home that day?
No.
Did you conduct any type of drug screens on either one of the children that day?
No.
Okay. I believe in your direct testimony, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I thought you stated that the child did not make it to his doctor's appointment in early February. Can you please correct me if I'm wrong? I don't want to misspeak for you, but that is the note that I made, is that you stated that the baby missed his doctor's appointment, I believe would have been scheduled on February the 7th at Christ Care Pediatrics. And I don't know if that was a discussion that you had on February the 21st, or if that was something that you was testifying from memory.
February 25th, the parents ensure that all scheduled appointments are kept.
Okay. Okay. So if I heard you say that the baby didn't make it to his doctor's appointment around February the 7th, that may have been something I misheard.
I don't have no knowledge of him
Okay.
at the doctor
Do
on
you-
the 7th.
Okay, do you know, so you do not know if he actually had a doctor's appointment on February the 7th and all was well?
Not till Christ Care had sent me all the paperwork.
And then you were aware
That he had one,
did have an
yes.
appointment? Okay, so if I wrote that down, then I wrote that down incorrectly, just to make for sure. I just want to make sure that is not your testimony today, that he did not attend his doctor's appointment on February the 7th.
The one on the 21st, they was ordered to take Dylan to the doctor, to the hospital for some lab work at that day.
Okay. He also attended on February the 21st
Right.
as well, but what about on February the 7th? Are you aware that
I
he
was
went?
unaware until the 1st of May, when I got the paperwork that he did have an appointment on the 1st.
So you
on the
are
7th.
acknowledging here today, sorry, didn't mean to cut you off. You're acknowledging here today that he attended a well child visit on February the 7th as well as on February the 21st, correct?
Yes, but they did not take the test on the 7th.
Okay, but he did attend that doctor's appointment.
Correct.
Okay. Are you referring to some personal notes or a different set of notes?
I'm just reading the thing that the doctor had faxed us.
Okay, I just want to make sure what you were using for the
It's-
record to
yeah, it's
reflect your
from Christ Care.
recollection. Okay,
Yeah, and it states that they made the appointment, first visit with us on February the 7th.
Okay.
That was his first visit.
okay. And that was a well child visit,
Yes,
and the baby appeared fine? Or does it?
it doesn't say. It
Doesn't
just-
say that, okay. But there's nothing saying there was anything wrong?
Correct,
Nothing was reported to the agency that anything was wrong?
correct.
And if the pediatrician had noted something being wrong with the child, they would have more than likely contacted the agency, like they did later on in May?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. You talked a little bit with Mr. Tiemann, I believe, in regards to how bad the phone reception and the telephone service was out at the Mount Hope Road address in Otway, correct?
Correct.
And did the Groves have an actual old-school landline?
No.
Did they rely on cell phones for communication?
Yes,
Did they have access to the internet, if you were aware?
I was not aware of that.
Okay, so you do not know if their phone lines would have been enhanced by the use of the internet?
Correct.
Okay, and is it your testimony that you do know that they had sketchy or spotty cell phone service on occasion?
On occasion, and I actually had to use my cell phone out there. On February the 4th, when I went there, I tore my car completely up. So I was trying to get a hold of the towing company, and I had to walk around trying to find service.
So you personally have actual experience with having terrible phone reception out there?
Correct.
So you had to kind of walk and hold your hand up and
Yes.
hold your leg up and your arm up and try to capture a signal, correct?
Correct.
So if you made multiple attempts to call them or text them, that's not unusual that either that may not have gone through or may not have been received because of the bad reception, correct?
Mr. Grove says if he laid it in a certain part of the window where he would lay it, he would always get the messages.
But you don't know if he always laid it
I
there
do
or
not
not?
know that.
Okay, so it was not striking to you that there wasn't always an immediate return phone call,
Correct.
correct? Okay, thank you. Then again, on February the 25th, you did complete a separate home visit, correct?
Correct.
And that all appeared well,
Yes.
no concerns?
No concerns at all.
Once again, I believe that it was reported that all was going well, and nothing jumped out at you in regards to a need to remove the child at that time, correct?
Correct.
Okay? You did not report any injuries,
Correct.
did not note any injuries.
Correct.
What do you recall of where the child was at that time, who was holding him, who was not holding him?
Jessica was always holding him when I'd go out there.
Okay. So if Jessica was once again holding him, would she have been holding him in the cradling position as we discussed earlier?
Correct. And then she put him on her shoulder.
Okay. And, but do you know if that is what occurred when you were there on February the 25th?
Other than her cradling. That was the only thing that I seen her do.
You only recall her actually cradling him in her arms, where he would be laying on his back, his head resting in the crook of her arm, essentially.
And she would kiss him.
Okay, and she would show affection to him. Okay, did Mr. Grove show an appropriate concern or affection for Dylan when you were there?
Yeah, because every time I had asked a question, he would answer it.
Okay, he seemed appropriately concerned.
Yes.
He gave appropriate responses.
Yes.
Did he appear as if he was under the influence of anything?
No.
And once again, I believe that your testimony is that he was wearing some type of garment that covered up most of his body,
Correct.
not wearing a hat.
No.
But once again, not to beat a dead horse, but most of his head was not actually visible to you,
Correct.
correct? Once similar to the same questions I asked you before, basically his hands, his face, and a little bit of his forehead was exposed to you visibly, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Midline from the back of his head not exposed to you?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. There was some issue made about Mr. Groves not attending court on February the 27th of 2019 at juvenile court.
It'd be March the 27th.
I'm sorry, March the 27th. I apologize for misstating that month. While at court, was there contact made with Mr. Groves, either through court personnel or through his attorney?
Yes.
Okay, and so he was available through either a text message or a phone call during that period of
After
time?
a little bit.
After it?
He finally returned.
But he was reached?
Yes.
Okay, and at that point in time, you scheduled your March 28th home visit, correct? Okay. And as you stated before in your testimony, it's not unusual sometimes for folks not to show up for court in the court. Does the court make a big deal out of it if attorneys are able to reach their clients by phone as long as there's an agreement?
As long as there's an agreement.
Okay, and as long as there's not testimony that's actually going to be taken on the record, parents sometimes are able to agree with their attorneys while they're on the phone.
Correct.
And that's what happened on that March 27th day.
Correct.
And so there was not really a big deal made out of it, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And that's not atypical for those proceedings in juvenile court?
No.
Okay. And once again, on March the 28th, for that visit, there were no notes of concern for you?
Correct.
Nothing appearing out of the ordinary?
Nothing.
Once again, you testified that that the baby was wearing a sleeper.
Correct.
Once again, you noted in your testimony that Jessica Groves was holding the child.
Feeding when I arrived.
Oh, I'm sorry, feeding the child. And so was the child it wasn't old enough to sit in a high chair.
Correct.
Okay. So how was she feeding the child? Was she holding the child and giving him a bottle?
Yes, holding the child and giving him the bottle.
Okay. So once again, was she cradling him in her arms, had him in her lap, had him on a boppy pillow? What was going on?
Cradling him.
Cradling him.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, his head was resting in the crook of his arm. Her arm, I'm sorry.
Correct.
And the majority of his head would not have been exposed.
Correct.
She was feeding him,
Yes.
showing him appropriate attention at that time.
Yes.
Did Mr. Groves answer your questions and respond to the conversation appropriately?
Yes.
Did he seem to have appropriate concern for his child?
Yes.
Okay. And although you were asked about whether or not there was an injury to his head, you did not see the entire portion of his head, correct?
Correct.
And that is true for all of the 3 home visits and face-to-face contacts you had with this child. You did not see the majority of the portion of his head.
Correct.
Thank you. Then we get into a pattern and a practice of Mr. Groves and Mrs. Groves avoiding you.
Correct.
You never had face-to-face contact, really, with either one of them after that point, correct?
Correct.
Okay. People that start avoiding the agency raises suspicions, correct?
Correct.
No one else that you talked to had ever seen the child again after March 28th, correct?
Correct.
You talked to friends, families, neighbors, as many folks that you all could reach out to, correct?
Correct.
No one saw this child after March 28th, correct?
Correct.
Not that you were able to ever ascertain, correct?
Correct.
I know this is very upsetting for you, as well as it is for all of us. But we don't know what happened after March 28th, do we?
No.
They were avoiding you.
Yes.
They were avoiding their own family.
Yes.
They never really came forward to try to get Daniel Jr. back, did they?
No.
Other than the text message, hey, what's going on?
That was it.
Mr. Groves did exhibit concern about Daniel Jr.'s welfare and asked where he was at, correct?
Correct.
He did play somewhat of a game with you and kept telling you that he was going to produce the baby, correct?
Correct.
He never did he?
No.
Did you suspect at that time that the child was not alive?
Yes.
That would be the only reason why he wouldn't produce the child, correct?
Correct.
Did you notice or observe an unusual relationship between Jessica Groves and Daniel Groves when you were in their presence?
No.
Did you observe a loving relationship between the two of them?
Yes, they was very supportive of each other.
They were bonded to each other, correct?
Correct.
Would you say that's an accurate observation?
Yes.
They'd been together for a long time?
20
From
years.
your understanding?
Yeah,
20 plus years?
correct.
Did you ever observe, while you were asking questions of maybe Mr. Groves, that he would look to Mrs. Groves before he answered or gave you any answers?
I never noticed.
Okay. Okay. But at that time, everything was all okay, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And on the occasions, just to be clear, and I believe that you've already testified to this, you did not pick up or manipulate the baby in any form or fashion other than tickling his foot on that one occasion, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Your Honor, may I have a conversation with Mr. Shred? Ms. Kraft, after that 3/28 day, you never had a face-to-face again with either one of the Groves, the parents, Jessica or Daniel.
Correct.
You never saw Dylan again.
Correct.
You only saw Daniel Jr.,
Correct.
and he also kind of fell out of contact with his parents as well, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you, that's all I have this time.
Scott, you agree, correct?
No, Your Honor.
Any other questions for this witness?
No, Your Honor. No, Your Honor.
Not at this time, Your Honor, thank you.
Is she excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, she would be excused for our purposes.
Okay, you're free to go. Ladies and gentlemen, it's now time for our lunch recess. I'm going to ask, probably noticed the clock in the courtroom is a little slower than the one that's up there on the screen. The one on the screen, I believe, is a little more accurate. I'm going to ask that you be back in the jury room at 25 minutes after 1. During the lunch recess, I'm going to conduct some other hearings on some other cases and would ask counsel to be back here at the same time. It'd be my intention to be in the courtroom at 1:30 to start the afternoon session of testimony. Remember my earlier admonition to you, do not discuss this case amongst yourselves, do not discuss it with anyone else, do not permit anyone to discuss it with you or in your presence. It is your duty not to form or express an opinion on this case until it is finally submitted to you. This time, I'll see you in about an hour. Court is recessed.